This one tip will keep you from the grocery store this week. How do you shop your kitchen, skip the grocery store, and stay away from that scary place, right? So your kids are growing, you and your spouse are trying to eat healthy so that you can be around for those milestones, big and small, for your children, right? Then there's the reality of sports, practices, last minute work meetings, dentist appointments. Insert all of life's responsibilities here, and you're spent physically, emotionally, and mentally. The cycle continues until we decide to stop. Today is the day. I'm going to teach you how to meal plan and be successful at it. You're listening to the Debt Rebel podcast, Personal Finance for Families, where we talk about how to keep up with your growing kids while keeping your finances in check. I'm your host, Jules the Budget Nerd, and I'm on a personal mission to create other debt rebels because I've seen firsthand the benefits of debt-free living. My husband and I accumulated over $107,000 in consumer debt, fought about our money and our spending habits before we decided to pull the plug and make a plan. So stick around if that sounds like something that you would like to learn, and I will show you how we did it and how you can too. But let's dive into today's episode where we can get back on track financially and also take care of one of our basic needs of human life. If you want to check out episode 3, I also talk about survival mode budgeting and how to cover all the other basic needs of life. Waste drives me absolutely crazy. I love being efficient and using every last bit of something. Financial waste, whether that's making sure that we're utilizing our money the best we possibly can, but also food waste drives me bananas. No pun intended. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that. The average American household throws out over $900 worth of food every single year. I could think of a whole bunch of other things that I would rather spend $900 on. How about you? So, how do we do that? How do we eliminate food waste? Meal planning. Okay, and I'm not talking about like you have to prep all this stuff. I'm just talking about creating a plan so that you buy what you need and want with food. Buy what you need and then also eat what you have, right? Because we can't skip meals. I don't recommend that, especially if you have growing children. Skipping meals, oh my gosh, not a recipe for a happy household, right? So how do we have success in meal planning and staying on budget when it comes to our food, like the food category, food budget? So first, I like to look back at what I've spent before. First, we have to decide how much money we have available to spend on food every pay period. So I would say look over your bank statement or your credit card statement, however you paid for groceries this last month, and add it all up. So you know where you're starting, and then we're going to talk about some ways to bring that down. So if you get paid twice a month or every 2 weeks, depending on the month, you're going to divide that number by 2. If you get paid weekly, divide that total number by 4. For example, according to the USDA, the average 5-person American household spends about $900 a month on groceries. So if you get paid biweekly, that's $450 a pay period that you spend on food. What if you set a goal to reduce that by 10 or 20%? In this example, that's saving $90 to $180 that you could use for your emergency fund or paying off your debt or anything else, right? So let's look at how to stay within that allotted amount. When you've tried to tackle this in the past, do you start with meal planning first? That's what we used to do, but it always felt disjointed. So now I hop on myfridgefood.com, select the items that I already have on hand, and it pumps out recipes that I can make right now based on the things that are in my home. Whether that's in my fridge or in my cabinets, the ingredients that I have on hand, I can make something out of. So that's shopping your own kitchen, right? So then from there, I open up my calendar app or a printed calendar if you prefer to use paper. I find when I got started with this that planning on paper was easier until I got a groove going. Put those recipes into the appropriate days. What meal times always find you scrambling or heading through the drive-through, or you just know that it's going to be a long day and I need to have something available right away. So if it's breakfast, just plan those for the week. Maybe it's dinner, which is which could be the hardest. Plug in your recipes for that. So find based on the items that you have on hand, find some breakfast recipes. I like to plan ahead and prepare some of those things ahead of time so that the convenience, I've already taken care of it ahead of time. When you're getting started, don't try and plan an entire month at a time. It's so overwhelming. So maybe you just look at the next 3 days. Or maybe just look at the busy days this coming week. This is really good, especially with kids going back to school. You know that, okay, the first few days of school are crazy because you're in a brand new routine. There's so many things going on. You also have to take care of your regular responsibilities, right? Going to work. And then there's also the emotion and the restructuring of your days because kids are back in school. So maybe right now you just take it and you look, okay, I'm going to plan the day before school starts, the day school starts, and then the next day. Maybe you're just going to plan out those 3 days so that you can be present for your kids the night before school and you're not scrambling trying to figure out what to make for dinner, and then take care of the other 3 days. So what if you don't have a stockpile of food on hand, right? Look over the ads for your favorite store and see what's in season. Now, that's a big one when it comes to produce specifically, is to see what's in season and what could be on sale. Add that to your online shopping cart, and then you'll pick it up on your way home from practice or your way home from work or whatever. Don't forget to add those items to your list on myfridgefood.com so you have new recipes that you can add to your meal plan. If you enjoy looking at recipes and find new meals to make, check out some cookbooks from the library or check out Pinterest, which is I feel like the honey hole for all things food. I have a Pinterest, Jules the Budget Nerd on Pinterest. Check it out. I have some of my go-tos saved in a meal planning board there. I like to be organized, but I also know that sometimes I just like to do things on a whim. So that's a great place to get creative and get ideas, is on Pinterest. Other quick tips that have helped us keep our costs down when it comes to meal planning is buying in bulk, but only for things that we use a lot of. So for instance, pantry items like flour and sugar or those types of things. I'm not talking, don't buy everything in bulk unless it's stuff that you use a lot of. I'll shop a lot of store brands instead of name brands on things. Store brands are typically a lot cheaper than name brands when it comes to food. Plan recipes that have 5 ingredients or less. Now, this is a good one because you don't want spending $5 on an ingredient that you're only going to use one time. So try and keep those extra ingredients down. So if you plan 5 or less, then typically those are going to be some pretty solid ingredients that you can transform into a lot of different meals. Now, the cool thing about this meal planning process is it takes into account dietary restrictions, allergies, all of those things, because it's the things that you can eat. Just plug those in and it'll come up with recipes for you. Now, we also stagger our perishable items based on their shelf life. So tomatoes have a shorter shelf life. Potatoes, those have a little bit longer, so we don't necessarily use those first. We'll use the tomatoes before the potatoes. Tomatoes before potatoes. Storing produce appropriately. That was a big one. We'd end up throwing out stuff because we didn't store it correctly, or it would get shoved to the back of the refrigerator and we'd forget about it. So having these items planned out, and no, I'm not endorsed by myfridgefood.com. It's an app there's an app, but there's also the website. It has saved us so much money and so much planning because it takes into account what we already have. All right, some other great tips that have helped us with the meal planning and grocery shopping is frozen produce versus fresh produce. So depending on your family's nutritional needs, this one can really maximize your grocery savings for certain recipes. So frozen produce tends to be a little bit cheaper than fresh produce. So if a recipe can use frozen produce, use that instead of a fresh produce, because you're going to save a little bit, and every little bit does add up. I have a list of some quick, easy recipes and meals that I like to have those items on hand, or I will make them and freeze them. They're available so that when I really just want to hit the drive-through and I don't want to go home and cook, I can use those things. I can pull it out, throw it in the oven, or I can throw it in the Instapot or the crock pot in the morning, and it's ready in the evening when I get home and I'm hungry. Anything that you can do to skip the drive-through or eating at a restaurant, because we all have to eat, but the more that we use the convenience part of getting our food, the more expensive it's going to cost. So drive-throughs, eating in a restaurant, those are services. And so when we take on that task ourselves, less likely to overspend in our food category. Fun fact about me, I didn't start learning how to cook until I was 40 years old. I probably would have qualified for that show, Worst Cooks in America. I was really good at creating a bunch of I'm going to try all these things on Pinterest, and then I didn't follow through with them. So now I have learned how to cook some basics. I am not a gourmet chef by any means, so don't let me fool you there. I'm way better at managing money than cooking, but I have found some recipes. I've tried out some recipes that my family loves and that can save us some money along the way. Instapot dinners, crockpot dinners, sheet pan meals, freezer meals. So I would suggest collecting a lot of those and having your family rate them. So, and you also take into account how long it takes you to make them, so you can kind of categorize those. I know these are some extra steps, but the time that you spend preparing this will save you a lot in the end, both time and money. So this could be like the extra credit version of meal planning, is having a list of meals that your family enjoys and that are easy and quick to get on the table. Once I have a good collection of recipes to try, and maybe ones that we already make and love, I sat down with a calendar of our activities and I put meals in that made sense. For example, if we have an activity on a certain night, I would look at what we have in the freezer and I would pull that out so that I could warm that up either before or after that activity, and know that I can tell my child confidently we have food at home and we're going to eat as soon as we get home. Some nights I was able to cook a meal and serve it right away, and so I would maybe make it a little bit bigger for lunch the next day, or I would toss it in the freezer for those "Mom, I'm hungry" moments, right? We know those all too well, right? A few tips that make meal planning even easier is theme nights. So maybe you've heard of Meatless Mondays, Taco Tuesday, or even getting your family involved in planning the menu. Challenge each person to find a recipe that has less than 5 ingredients, or one that they would cook or eat themselves. So age appropriate here, of course. So not, small children aren't necessarily going to be able to cook. I would encourage you, though, to allow them to be a part of the process of planning. It's going to teach them a lot. This is a great way for them to learn this skill also, and free you up for some other things. So my soon-to-be kindergartner likes to help with the planning and preparation. So I know that might not work for every family, but you'd be surprised if you give your kids that option, that they're more likely to say yes to a meal if it's something that they were a part of creating. That's something that we have learned. I have heard that from countless families, is if they're involved in the process, then it's kind of their idea. And so if you have a very picky eater, give it a try, see what happens. Also, it's just a great memory. So think about if that was something that you did as a child and what kind of memories you have tied to that. If it's not, is that something that you want to create for your family as well? If you're like me, I have ingredients in the fridge and in the cabinets, but I wasn't sure what to make sometimes. So when we are really trying to rein in our budget, and especially our food budget, every 3 months, I will go through and try and shop specifically from what I have on hand. That's where myfridgefood.com is incredibly helpful, because I just put it all in there and then I add those recipes to the rotation so that things aren't expiring. Things are still fresh, especially with non-perishables. That's a great way to stay on task with meal planning. So I hope some of these tips were helpful. I hope that myfridgefood.com will be helpful for you. It has been a game changer for us when it comes to our food budget because it reduced the amount of money that we were spending on food that we were eventually throwing away. It helped us get back some of our time, but it also helped us create a little bit better eating habits, right? So there's a lot of wins when it comes to meal planning, but you have to figure out what works best for your family. So I hope these tips were helpful for you. I would love to hear if you try it out. This is when I work with my coaching clients, this is one of the biggest ahas and the biggest takeaways is the food, because we have to eat to survive. We can only go a few days without food, but eating the right foods, and I'll talk about that in a future episode. Making healthy habits and healthy choices isn't just about our finances, it's about our future as well. And so this has been really helpful for our family. So I hope that it is helpful for your family. And if it is, please let me know. The best way you can let me know is to leave a review on the platform that you're listening to this to, and let me know that you love it. And then if you want to take some more steps with the meal planning process or the budgeting process, I have a free 5-day challenge that you can take. And it goes through how to create a budget that works for you and your family. And so when we talk about the food part, that's day 5. But the other days will teach you some basics on how to build that first budget so you can get out of that paycheck to paycheck cycle. If that's something that you are interested in, let me know. You can go to my website at julesthebudgetnerd.com. That's JEWLZ, thebudgetnerd.com, and hit the 5-day challenge there. Thank you so much for listening. Today's episode was a listener requested episode. So if you have other podcast topics that you would love to hear, let me know. You can let me know on my website at julesthebudgetnerd.com. I would love to be able to give you more of what you want and to help you create a budget and create spending habits that better line up with what matters most to your family. Remember, every step that you take towards financial freedom is a rebellion against debt. So stay strong, keep your eyes on the prize, and stay resilient, debt rebel.